Hello and welcome to tonight's Pelican Feed.AVI. My name's John, it's actually the best part of my day. Before getting started I'd like to explain there are a couple of rules, and the first is if a pelican should come and sit right alongside of you, or indeed right on top of your head, we ask you not to reach out and touch them, because if you do they'll think you're giving them a free feed, and the free feed could easily turn out to be the end of your fingers. Other than that, they really are incredibly fussy and they probably won't eat you. Excuse me. And some of you that like to stretch out may get a bonus because they could park over your shoes and the shoes could change colour. Could happen. The other very fair and reasonable rule concerns photographs and videos. Feel free to take as many as you like, but if I should happen to tip over, fall on the drink and make a complete goose of myself, that's it, no more photos or videos, which is only fair. Each evening penguin tours are conducted from the pale blue-green building on the other side of the wharf. If you get there about 7:15, we'll just watch, this one should come round and do a fancy water ski landing for you too. Might just glide over the top of you, hopefully won't bomb you. Like a big air conditioner. This one carrying on like a pork chop is an adolescent one trying to get its bill down a parent's throat. Each evening penguin tours are conducted from the pale blue-green building on the other side of the wharf. If you get there about 7:15 you've got more time to look at the local aquarium. Some of the fish are fed at 7:30, you're given a talk about them and the stars before going out on a penguin walk, and the whole thing will take about an hour. There's a second tour at 8:30. If you are from the northern hemisphere, we would really encourage you to come down and have a look at the stars, because it will probably be the first time in your lives that you will have seen the stars the right way up, and they should be good tonight too. It's true. Now, the pelicans that we have here are the Australian pelican. They are the largest of the pelican species found in the world. However, we do feel morally obliged to point out to people from America and Texas in particular, that not only are these pelicans the largest in the world, they're also by far the best looking pelicans in the world as well. They're fairly good flyers. They can get to about 6,000 metres on their 2-metre wingspan, and the odd one will make it from Australia to New Zealand. Their normal range extends from southern Indonesia, and they'll go as far south as northern Tasmania, and the reason they tend not to go further south is the cold worries them quite a lot. And the reason the cold worries them is they have very little protective oil or grease in their feathers to keep the water out, so if they bob around the ocean a lot or it comes in cold, wet and rainy, they will eventually get wet through to the skin and start to shiver. Excuse me. Now you can see quite a few of these birds are shivering now. I wouldn't have thought they were really cold. They're probably just quite pleased to see you and a little bit excited. The way in which they feed, a group of them, acting as a group, will herd fish into shallow water, and once they've got the fish herded into the shallows, they scoop them up with their bills. As you would imagine, the pelican's bill opens and closes like this, but they are unusual in that the lower jaw can open right out to form a large net that they use to scoop the fish up. On the other hand, the American brown pelican, a very ordinary looking bird if I might say so. They are shocking things. When they fly across the surface of the water and see a fish deep in the water, they can dive in like a gannet or a tern and catch the fish. If the Australian pelican tries a clever trick like that, they'll make complete fools of themselves, because they're so buoyant they'll just pop up like a cork. And in fact the only way these birds can go underwater naturally is when they're assisted by sharks or crocodiles, which is something they try and dodge. The fine looking bird that's just landed is an adult Pacific gull. You may see a mousy brown version getting around, that will be the adolescent form. And just remember, if they park right over your shoes, they can change colour. The only visual difference between a male and female pelican is one of size, with the male being larger, and the fully mature bird has a little bit of yellowy brown on the point of the chest that looks like water stain. It is in fact the feather colour change, because the immature bird is plain white on the point of the chest and the very young bird is mousy brown in the feather colour, like that one just there, that moth-eaten one, and we've got a couple over here as well. And speaking of colours, as you can see, the normal colour for a pelican's bill and jowl is quite pale. However, when both the males and the females are ready to mate, the bill and jowl will change to a deep pinky purple colour, and they will allow the jowl to hang out on the jaw, and they will shimmer it in a mating display. For those of you who are particularly interested in the antics of pelicans, the female pelican does not mate for life, but is generally regarded as being fairly sporting. Now, I feed these birds every day of the year, and in order to do it I buy fish from the local fish processor and run freezers when the fishermen can't get out. The whole exercise is very expensive, totally funded out of my pocket, and I go right through the winter when no one turns up, so you can see it today. In order to help cover the cost, we ask for a donation of $3 per child, $4 per adult at the end of the feeding. If you have to leave early, this is not part of the plan. If you have to leave early, feel free to leave the donation in my boot on the back of the ute, because to walk off without leaving a donation is regarded as being extremely mean, miserable and shabby, and it makes me irritable, which is not good. Now you think I wear a hat to keep the sun off. Nothing to do with it. It's the table manners that's the problem. Now I'm going to begin by trying to feed some seagulls. If the seagulls are hungry, they should take the fish from my hand. There's a fairly good chance that the pelicans will regard that as a complete and utter waste of perfectly good fish. And you may see some aerial combat. If you're exceptionally lucky, that aerial combat could take place over your heads. And if you happen to get bombed, that's regarded as a bonus and an optional extra for which we don't charge. Most people find that incredibly generous, so we'll see how your luck holds out. Hello, we've got a heavier roo loose in the top paddock. Now you notice how the pelicans do that fancy water ski landing. Sometimes you can crash a pelican's landing at the last minute by throwing a piece of fish at them. And if I get a chance, I'll demonstrate for you. Haven't got one coming around that I can do it with. Yes, I will. No. Hey. When this one comes round, we might be able to trash its landing. Where'd he go? Missed him. Sometimes the seagulls can appear quite shy. I'll just try and trash this one's landing. Hang on a sec. I missed him. Sometimes when the seagulls can appear quite shy about taking the fish from my hand, it is because the pelicans are really hungry and they have been known to eat seagulls live. One very distinguished pelican was seen eating a chihuahua live once. Hey. And that justified that particular pelican's place on the face of the earth forevermore, in my opinion, because chihuahuas are shocking things and they should not be encouraged by anybody. They're dreadful. When pelicans eat their food, they don't chew it at all, they simply swallow everything whole, and you'll just have to accept as gospel that they can swallow a fair amount in one hit. And I will try and demonstrate with the old fools on the rocks, and I am of course referring to the pelicans. The trick here is you get a decent handful of fish and you throw it flat out in your general direction. Generally speaking, the pelicans will open their traps and catch it, sometimes they don't, and that simply improves the people behind enormously. But I haven't missed for a couple of days, so I think you can relax. The other thing that might happen is a particularly happy pelican may walk amongst you. If that happens, there's no need for hysterical squealing or indecently throwing your legs up in the air. Just relax. The pelican will not hurt you. Now that one's got something wrong with its eye, but still I think. He's got the sulks now. As you can see, their manners can be a bit ordinary. Now you've got a couple of happy ones there, you can tell. Don't worry about them, it'll all come out the other end liquid by the morning. When pelicans breed, they don't make a fancy nest, they just have a shallow scrape for a nest, in which they lay up to 4 eggs. The eggs are creamy yellow in colour and rough textured, and they're unusual in that the first one laid will tend to be larger than the rest of them. The first chick to be hatched will probably be the only one that will survive, because competition for food in the nest is so intense. The weaker ones basically die of starvation. Most of the parents go out and forage for food, and they bring the food back in their gullet, not their bill as you would imagine, and when they get back to the nest they regurgitate the food on the ground for the young to pick up. Now in order to get ahead of the competition, the young birds learn the habit of putting their bills right down the parent's throat to pull the food out early. The problem with that clever trick is, if you look at the seagulls, you can see that they have nostrils on their bills. Pelicans, on the other hand, have no nostrils. So often you'll see the young bird with his bill right down the parent's throat appear to stagger and fall over. And I'll leave it up to your imagination to work out whether it's partial suffocation or the parent's atrocious breath that's causing the problem.
John, that one won't regurgitate all over that lady, will it? Yeah.
I don't think so. It's not a crow supporter, that pelican.
Oh, okay.
But at least they'd have a conversation, please.
Not to mention a fantastic
Now,
YouTube video.
Go underwater. I'll throw the rest of this fish out into deeper water, and what you'll see is pretty well identical to what you would see if you were watching them fish in the wild. As they swim about, they'll hold their wings up like this in order to keep them dry. When one bird turns, the rest will appear to turn in unison like a ballet team. When I throw the fish in, they'll rush forward, their bodies will get a rolling action up, their heads will go under and their bums will come out, and you'll see they just can't go underwater at all. Now they know I'm only doing this to irritate them, so just remember, if they tip me over, no photos, thank you.
The other side, you can see the fish still sticking out the other side. See, he's got it too. He's got fish stuck.
Now you can see how completely and utterly hopeless they are at going underwater, and it drives them absolutely nuts. You can also see how wet they're becoming because they lack that natural waterproof oiling grease in their feathers to keep them dry. The way the wind is tonight, they may just hang around here telling lies about their fishing prowess for a bit before heading out to a little island you can see on the horizon to spend the night. Other than that, that completes tonight's pelican feeding. Thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as I did.
Immensely, but